And we're back for one more episode of
The Horror Guys. I'm Kevin.
I'm Brian.
And this is number 248 of our little podcast where we talk about horror movies.
That's almost 250.
Almost. And today we're going to have a special mention, too. We have a book to throw in the mix. But mostly movies.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
4 movies and a short, as always, plus a book review. We don't get very many of those. Books take a lot longer than a movie.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Well, what do we
more
got?
than 2 hours. Oh, we got, I don't think we have anything brand new, but we have some Marshes, The Basement, a science fiction-y one called Antimatter, and sort of documentary kind of thing, Werewolves Unleashed, and The Sixth Sense and Hellraiser VI are bonus movies that we have out there.
Ooh.
We're not going to fully talk about them, but the reviews are on the website.
And our book review is Holly by Stephen King.
Yeah, we read that.
Stephen King's scary horror. Well, maybe not so much.
Well, it's creepy, unsettling.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, so go over to horrorguys.com to read our reviews, one per day. Check out our email newsletter at horrorbulletin.com. You can sign up for that. You get 1 email a week with all our stuff in it. Mm-hmm. Just one big email, not a ton of crap. Nobody wants a daily email. I know that much. I get them all the time, and I'll usually hit delete on them.
Usually, yeah.
Once a week, I can handle that.
Sure.
Yeah, so anyway, the Horror Bulletin Monthly, our print magazine, has just come out. Issue number 25. Everything we watched last month. It's got this cool ghostly pirate ship cover.
Yeah, it looks like it should glow in the dark.
It should, yeah. But you can pick that up over at Horror Guys Shop, or find a link at horrorguys.com, or go just wherever you buy your books and get it there.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary stuff.
Creepy.
All right, well, this is October, Halloween month, so you'd figure there'd be all kinds of brand new good horror movies out there. And I'm a little disappointed this year.
The crop isn't as
bountiful.
Fruitful and bountiful this year. There are some, but it's not a flood. It seemed like last year was more.
The bounty of horror
things.
films is starting to look like the children of the corn.
And it is early October still. There's still more stuff coming.
Well, we've been keeping up on the new films this year, so we're not piling them all up in October.
That's true.
But it seems like a lot of the streaming places and stuff last year held off and released all their new stuff in October. And there was just a ton of really good stuff in October. We've had a few.
A few, yeah.
We're not going to talk about any of them this week because we're kind of caught up.
Yeah, caught up on the new stuff.
If there's something recent that we have not talked about that you want to hear us talking about, drop us a note. Email at horrorguys.com.
Or if there's some classic thing out there that you discovered that we have overlooked, mention that to us too.
It's getting harder and harder to find a classic one we haven't talked about.
There are. We're scraping. Yeah, we're finding them. Yeah.
Not that it's hard to find horror films.
No, we haven't caught up yet.
We have done over 1,500 horror films.
And we're not caught up.
And every day we're like, hey, you remember what's it called? Oh, yeah, we haven't seen that yet.
Yes.
Just the other day we were driving down the street saying, look how foggy. Oh, we didn't do the fog yet.
Yeah, we saw that when it came out, but we haven't discussed it officially.
Yeah, we have no shortage of films to watch.
Uh-huh.
We are running a little short on the old classics, and we are probably not as current as we think we are on the new ones.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go on a little field trip today to the Marshes from 2018.
I love field trips. I love tromping around out in the swamp collecting samples.
I had never heard of this one. Where did you come up with this?
DVD. Picked up the DVD.
Oh, is this one of your dollar store finds?
No, used store.
Okay.
One of the stores where they have piles and piles of used things, and I saw it and I thought, that looks interesting.
All right. 2018's The Marshes, written and directed by Roger Scott, stars Daphne Cronenthal, Sarah Armenius, Matthew Cooper, and Sam Delich. Hour and 25 minutes. If you've never heard of it, like I hadn't, check out the trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free.
Well, the cast was good, and the production values are all excellent. It's never clear how much is real and how much is supernatural. The lines are kind of blurred, and I thought that made it interesting. But it's kind of slow-moving, and it's stretched a little bit too thin. So it's not quite a winner. It's good. I didn't think it was great. It's got vibes of Wolf Creek, I don't know if you've
Yeah,
if you remember that, the Australian serial killer guy. Some hints of that, but this has more of a supernatural element to it too.
I'm a little mixed on this one. I was kind of bored while we were watching it.
And yet it
But
was
then I thought about it
kinda
for off and on
good
for a couple of
too.
days
Yeah.
afterwards. So
Yeah.
it's something to think about, but it's not
I mean,
really an action
I
film.
think I'd put it like, a 6, 7,
Yeah, I think so.
I liked it more than disliked it.
I didn't like it when I watched it, but it grew on me as time passed.
Well, tell the folks what happened in it.
Well, Priya mentions to a coworker that she's up for a promotion. And it's going to be either her or Ben, but not both. Ben wants to pick up some samples from the Marshes. These guys are all like science students or something.
Uh-huh.
And Priya agrees to go along. Will is there. He's her new assistant. They're all science students. Credits roll as everyone drives away into the countryside. And I'll point out this is Australia, so it's, crazy countryside.
Yeah, huge countryside.
Will asks if he can get malaria out there. Well, you probably could.
Probably could, yeah.
They stop at Darcy's petrol station. It's a petrol station. It's not a gas station.
Yep.
Because it's Australia.
Because it's Australia.
And Priya talks to a man there who doesn't approve of what they do, although she denies it. And he's a jerk.
Yeah, he is.
He's not one of those we're all going to die kind of gas station attendants.
No, but he's a jerk.
Ben explains to Will that farmers and people have cleared out miles and miles of swampland to grow crops. They arrive and set up camp. Will points out that there's no service way out there, and the three take their samples.
What? No cell service? They're cut off.
Well, I figured that they got there, they got their samples, they're going to turn around and go home.
Oh, no, it's more complicated than that.
Night falls. Ben tells the story about the Swag Man, a ghost that haunts the swamps. The next morning, they run into a pig hunter and his wife. They're here illegally with no permit, and Priya tries to talk tough, but the hunter doesn't listen. He's the guy from the gas station.
Uh-huh.
That's why I didn't want them up there.
Yep, because they hunting.
That night, they hear someone in the woods right outside their camp. In the morning, they find a pig's head in their campfire. Well, it's 3 hours to the nearest phone, so Priya just says they need to get back to work. Will starts making deliverance jokes.
It's internationally known. Isn't that cool? Even in
What is
Australia,
America best known
even
for?
in Australia,
Deliverance.
they know about deliverance.
Well, that evening, Priya and Will kiss and sneak off into the woods together. They have sex in the mosquito-infested weeds, and Will chokes her to death.
That's a very itchy-looking sex scene.
But it's not real, it's just a dream. She goes outside to cool down, and something grabs her from behind. Oh, maybe that was just a dream, too.
Maybe. And this is where things start getting blurred a little bit.
Priya and Ben wake up in the morning, and apparently nothing happened to her last night at all. Ben warns her about getting too close to Will, who is only a student. Priya then goes off to get her samples alone. It doesn't take long before she starts hearing things. She gets scared and goes back to camp. She's had enough and is ready to leave, but Ben wants another couple of days. How many days
Yeah.
does it take to get some swamp
That's
samples?
A lot of samples they're taking here. A lot of different places, I guess.
Well, they've only got that one little car, though. How many samples could you take?
Yeah. And how different are they going to be? It's
Well-
swamp water.
They argue, and he says he can be done in the morning. He's been dragging this out for some reason. She gets angry and goes to bed. Priya wakes up in the middle of the night, and there's clearly someone outside her tent with sharp shears.
Yeah, it's those clipping shears, them creepy, snip, snip shears.
Well, she panics and runs off into the darkness, where she encounters the Swag Man before passing out. Is Swag Man mean something in Australian? Is that like homeless guy or junk man or something like that?
I don't know. I didn't look that up.
I think there's more to it than just his name. Well, she wakes up in her completely intact tent in the morning. She feels terrible, so Ben and Will go off to do their samples, leaving her at the camp. Priya meets up with a pig hunter's dog, but there's no pig hunters anymore.
Okay.
She goes looking for the guys, but keeps hearing and seeing things.
A swag man was a transient laborer who traveled by foot from farm to farm carrying his belongings in a swag. The term originated in Australia.
An itinerant worker.
Yeah.
Okay. Not homeless exactly, not a beggar.
Worker.
Okay.
A traveling worker, yeah.
Well, meanwhile, Ben and Will get lost out in the swamp. They find their missing camera, stolen by the pig hunters. There's a video on it of something killing the pig hunters. Well, they all start hearing the swagman's whistle. A naked man runs out of the weeds, but then he's pulled back in. The three science folks follow him and find him hanging from a tree. And it's the pig hunter. The three watch as the swagman cuts up his victim. The man gets the pieces he wants and leaves.
And that seems to be really happening as a physical, real thing. So
All three of them seem to see it.
How's a ghost managing to do that?
Well, there's a great deal of panicky running and freaking out. Ben goes off on his own and is immediately caught by the baddie. Soon they find him hanging upside down. They can't get him down fast enough, and the swagman guts him. Well, Priya runs and hides, but eventually the swagman catches her too. He smacks her and walks away, leaving her alive. She catches up to Will, who's in shock. He's feeding now. Once he's finished, he'll come after us.
Ew.
Well, they set back off through the tall grass to find their camp, but keep running in circles.
There's lots of tall grass.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Surprising. Yeah, okay. Well, even when they know they're doing it, they wind up back at the same place. They know they're running in circles and they can't stop.
Yeah. It's like they're trapped.
A snake bites Will. They've been out in this swamp for like a week now, and this is the first snake we've seen. And he goes into convulsions as the swagman approaches. Priya's right there, but she doesn't see when the swagman takes Will. Priya walks through the swamp and gets leeches all over her. After what seems like hours of crawling through weeds, at least to us, Priya finally makes it to the road. A police car finally pulls up, and Ben and Will are with them. No, wait, that was a hallucination. Now the swagman's got her, and he drags her off into the tall grass, kicking and screaming all the way.
So sometimes the swagman wins.
Sounds like always the swagman wins.
In this case, anyway. Yeah.
Well, it's sort of Blair Witch in the tall marshy grass. It's got good atmosphere and a genuinely creepy setting. How many days does a trip to pack up some samples take?
They were being very thorough, I guess.
They spent 2 or 3 nights there even before the action started. As a side note, we noticed right away they were all wearing the same outfit for all those days.
Out in the middle of nowhere with no running water.
I have no idea what a 4-day-old swamp water soaked shirt smells like. I'd just as soon never find out. What must that sex scene have been like?
Uh-huh.
Ew, you
Yeah,
people been
that.
rolling in the swamp for a week.
Ew.
And then there's all the bugs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Australians are tough people. I gotta give them that. So, was the swagman a ghost, like Ben said? What kind of ghost needs to eat people? And if he's just a serial killer, he sure does get around fast in a supernatural kind of way.
Yeah, it definitely blurred the lines.
Takes a very long time for there to be any action. Probably too long. Once it does start, it's mostly just running around in the weeds trying to avoid a guy who may or may not be supernatural. Actually, he may or may not even be real.
Mm-hmm.
It's well made, looks good, and has decent acting, but there's not quite enough meat on the bones here. It's just a little too slow and stretched out.
Yeah, it's better than not better. It's a decent movie. Yeah.
It's better than not better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's good except for the bad bits.
Well, it's okay. It's all right.
All right, now let's look at the bad bits.
Yeah.
The Basement
The
from
Basement.
2018. Directed by Brian M. Conley and Nathan Ives. Written by Nathan Ives, Brian M. Conley, and Sean Drecker. Stars Jackson Davis, Caleb Long, and Misha Barton. Hour and 28 minutes. Spoiler free. This got monotonous very quickly.
Yeah.
It's overacted with the main guy working way too hard at it, seeming very forced. We grew so weary of it that after a while we, quite honestly, fast-forwarded to the end to see how things wrapped up. We didn't miss a thing. It does have an interesting ending, but it's a promising premise that was disappointing.
Yeah, I saw the preview and I thought, yeah, that looks really interesting, and it wasn't.
Well, a few months back,
Yeah.
we did Nefarious,
Uh-huh.
where there's an interviewer and a guy in a prison cell, and they're doing like an interview.
Yeah.
And it was just the two guys, and the one guy was demon-possessed, and he was kind of hamming it up, overacting in some cases.
But I thought that
It was okay.
better than this. Yeah.
And this is kind of the same situation. It's two guys. One of them's way overacting.
the majority of it was just the two guys.
And it was, just the two guys in a room for the most
The
part.
majority, yeah.
All right. Well, not that we're going to really spoil anything because it sucks royally, but
Harsh.
what happens?
Well, a man with the Gemini
We watched this one, so
symbol.
you don't have to.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, I would say steer away from it. Yeah. A man with the Gemini symbol on his shirt turns on a blowtorch to a tied up woman and who screams, "I can change!" and credits roll. Well, we cut to Kelly watching her husband Craig play the piano. She sends him out for more champagne. He drives his Lamborghini to a kind of scuzzy convenience store and notices a headline about the Gemini killer still at large.
You know, if I had a Lamborghini, I would not be anywhere near that neighborhood.
He looked out of
You're
place.
just asking for
He
trouble.
really looked out of place, yeah. Was it a Lamborghini? I mean, it was
One of them kind of cars.
yeah,
I don't know.
along those lines.
Ferrari, maybe. I don't know.
Ridiculously expensive, overpowered sports car.
Yeah, not the sort of thing you'd want to drive to this place.
Yeah, it looked out of place. Yeah. Well, we see that he's texting someone who is not his wife. And someone in the van parked next to him opens the door and pulls him in. He's the next victim. And Craig wakes up tied to an old-style student desk in a dark room. Suddenly, a clown marches in. This is Billy the Clown, who plays circus music and juggles for Craig. Kelly calls on Craig's phone, and the clown makes note of her address. Billy the Clown eventually leaves Craig alone. Well, then a policeman comes into the basement, points a gun at Craig. Well, no, it's the same guy who was dressed as the clown earlier. Now he's dressed like a cop. And they have a scene, and the cop leaves and is replaced by a detective with a hat, badge, cigarette, the whole stereotypical works. And that's the same guy as well. He interrogates Craig, who he calls Billy, about the murder last night. And he knocks out a few of Craig's teeth and makes him swallow them. Meanwhile, Kelly, Craig's wife, goes to the convenience store looking for him. The clerk, Lauren, says they don't have security cameras outside. Well, she calls the police, who tells her that Craig has to be gone 24 hours before they'll do anything, which is a trope that's hooey. You don't, if you ever, if anybody ever comes up missing, don't go by that trope. You don't have to wait 24 hours. If it's legit a disappearance, the police will start acting on it right away. But anyway, Craig realizes, he's still in the basement, that the detective he's talking to is Bill, and that means something to him, but we don't know that. Suddenly he starts telling Bill what he wants to know. Well, Detective Bill, leaves, but soon returns in a prison uniform. He's been waiting for revenge. And at 27 minutes in, it's kind of clear where this is going. Brian started playing games on his phone, and I had 2 games going at once. Neither of us were really paying a lot of attention to it at this point. The prisoner tells...
It's a new level of awful.
Well, yeah. He's working so hard at it, though. You can see how hard he's acting, playing all these different characters. Well, the prisoner tells Craig stories, but as viewers, we don't have any reason to believe or pay any attention to it because Bill is obviously insane. He cuts off one of Craig's fingers.
Yeah, there's all
some
these
of his
characters,
fingers,
characters, all these stories he's telling, all this nonsense about the situation, and the guy's clearly just making it all up. It's not like we have any reason to believe any of it. It's just a crazy guy being crazy on screen for 9 hours.
Playing out his imaginary scenarios.
Yeah. Well, okay, go on. Go on.
Well, meanwhile, Kelly's friend Bianca comes over. She's the woman who is texting Craig about their affair. Well, Kelly says she knows Craig was having an affair with someone, and Bianca looks all surprised and puzzled. I don't know who it could be. Yeah. Well, back in the basement, a doctor comes in to treat Craig.
It's the same guy again.
Yes. And there's a bit more gore as Bill sews the wounded fingers back together while speechifying. Bill comes back again as a lawyer who's trying to keep Craig from the electric chair.
And at that point, we'd had about enough.
We fast-forwarded about 45 minutes.
And you can tell through the scenes that 45 minutes is just one character after another coming down into the basement and talking to the guy.
And slowly abusing him more and more every time. By the end, he's
pretty well worn down.
He's bashed up and cut and bruised and wounded. And, well, Billy's now wearing an executioner's black hood, and Craig's in much worse shape, drooling and apologizing to Kelly and recording his final message. Well, the Gemini killer lights up his blowtorch, just as we saw in the pre-credits scene, and Craig screams in terror. He burns Craig's head with the cutting torch, burns it right off, which doesn't seem like it'd be very efficient. Axe or saw or something would be. I don't know.
Burns right through the neck, removing the head. Yes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, plop. There, he's beheaded. Yep. This is the Gemini killer's MO. Well, Kelly complains on the phone about the police refusing to help. But then a very familiar-looking police officer comes to her door. And you're thinking, oh no, he's come to get her too. But then he says, it's done. Well, Bianca's on the couch unconscious, and Kelly asks him to take the trash out on the way out.
Oh, one of those stories.
She knew, and she set the whole thing up. And then we flash back to 1 month earlier, where Kelly talks to Bill about his acting and how he's doing. And, oh, by the way, I want you to kill my husband. I know you're the Gemini killer. And Bill's like, what? No, not me. And he's like, oh, knock it off. You're my twin. I know you, and I want you to do this for me. And so she was, he was the killer, and she was steering him, toward victims she wanted. And then she says, oh, and then you can go back to doing whatever you want to.
Well, this is like one of those acting classes where the teacher makes the student work through a handful of completely unrelated scenes and characters to see how good an actor they are for a stage play.
And making, going on that, one of the things that Kelly says to him, how's your acting going? Because he's taking, acting classes and improv classes. And so he's really insane. I mean, he's literally insane, playing out all these characters. Why does he doesn't need to take acting classes to be insane and play out these characters if he's really got a multiple personality thing going on, which it seems he does.
He's not faking being the Gemini killer. He really is.
He really is the Gemini killer, and he's really insane with all these split personalities. That's not acting, but he's acting like he was acting, and that kind of made it confusing. And
well, these guys, well, as far as going back to that acting class, these guys aren't that good, so it gets tedious very quickly.
Well, I mean, they go through the motions, but you can tell and it's hard to, explain or articulate, but, an actor that just shows up and slides into the part and you believe it's him and it's natural, really skilled actors, professionals, and this guy looked like he was working at it.
He was acting.
He was acting so hard.
Yeah, in the quotation marks, acting.
Yeah.
It's so unsubtly bad that it's cringy to watch. It really is. If he really had multiple personalities, he'd be a lot more subtle about it.
And he would just be doing it.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be acting. I don't know. It's strange.
Kevin says he could forgive this a lot more if it were a really low-budget indie movie, but it's not. This was a studio production that had a writer, director, and all the usual stuff. How this film happened, how this actually happened is beyond my comprehension.
Well,
somebody paid for this.
Indie movies have writers, directors, and all that stuff, too.
Yeah, but I mean, this was
big scale.
Yeah, this was not a little thing.
Yeah.
Well, for the past 9 months or so, I've been comparing all the terrible movies to Skinamarink. It's still better than Skinamarink has almost gotten to be my catchphrase. I sat through all of Skinamarink.
Yeah,
everything is compared to this. This is just an overacted, boring shitfest.
Oh, this was so much better than Skinamarink. Yeah, it really would put this way above Skinamarink.
I don't know. After last week, we ought to be comparing things to the Outwaters.
Well, there's that too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been some really bad movies in the past 12 months.
Ones that we didn't enjoy, but that happens. As many as we watch, there's going to be ones we really like and ones we really don't.
Yep. Okay, well, here's one that's kind of in the middle of the road. Werewolves Unleashed, 2023. Directed by Ward Heine, written by Chad Christie. Stars Chad Christie and a whole bunch of interviewees. It's a documentary.
And we've seen others by these folks. They do a lot of cryptid
yeah, I know in the past we've done
animals,
at least 2 with Bigfoot, one with the Dogman. There may be another one I don't remember, but they've all been relatively entertaining.
Yeah.
They do the interviews interspersed with like reenactments and animations, and they're pretty high quality.
Yeah, and I think for the most part they do a pretty good job of seeming neutral.
We were both
Like,
a little unpleased with this
we'll
one, though.
present, you decide kind of thing, But this one is, this one wasn't as good.
Spoiler-free, what happens?
Well, there's not anything to spoil plot-wise because it's just a documentary. So, the outing, this one wasn't as strong as some of their other works. There are fewer witnesses with their stories. There's less history and lore, and it seemed a little bit aimless. This was a little thin.
Yeah.
There's actually scenes where they're sitting around, debating and talking about, who can we talk to, and we're having a hard time finding any witnesses and people we can talk to. And I'm thinking, we don't need to see that. Just find people and present them to us.
Yeah,
That's
they
your
complain
job.
that it's hard to find people to talk about these things, and then you start hearing people that you really don't quite believe because you think they're just talking to be on camera.
Well, some of them were right on, and entertaining, people that seem to have genuinely had experiences. But this one couple in particular, and
They seem
you'll
to
be
get the
talking
most
to them.
screen time.
Yeah, they got the most screen time, and they start rambling about other stuff, spiritual things, and various things totally unrelated to werewolves and cryptids, and
Well, the production values are good. It looks good. It's sharp. It's got nice music. The weakness
yeah.
here
The folks
is
know what they're doing.
yeah.
They
The
do
weakness
good
here
work.
is the witnesses are just trash mostly.
Yeah, there was a lot less content in this one.
Okay, I make it sound that's just the worst thing
It's
ever.
not. It's not
not.
garbage, but it's not as strong as some of their others.
Well, we open with a group of monster hunters getting set up with wildlife cameras and talking around a campfire as the credits roll. They talk about having a bunch of eyewitnesses to interview about the dogman or the werewolf creature in the Ohio and Pennsylvania area. With the first couple that they bring on, talk about hearing the Ohio Howl, which is a well-known thing that you can hear on the internet.
Yeah, we actually looked it up. You
Yep.
can
Google the Ohio Howl, Howl, H-O-W-L, and you can hear that. I've heard this many times, actually.
Yeah.
Well, these two are very spiritual, in quotes, people. They also talk about how haunted the area is, with a lake that flooded an old cemetery. They talk about a legendary rivalry between the Dogman and the Sasquatch. She then talks about dreams that she had as a teenager. Then they talk about meditation and doing rituals and bring in some other way off-topic ideas. And we're like, well, these people are weird.
And off topic.
Yeah,
I mean,
don't care about your crystals and
I can
stuff.
forgive weird when it's on topic, but they kind of rambled a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the next man, he describes in details where he saw the inhuman creature. He describes it as a huge dog standing up on its hind legs, walking across the road. And this is the kind of thing you expect, not hearing about his teenager's dreams.
Yeah.
Well, the third witness is located near the previous man, and we very soon cut back to the first couple, talking about twisted tree branches and other things that have nothing to do with werewolves.
And at which point I was saying, more werewolf stories.
Less of these people.
Yeah.
We then cut to the producer calling a prospective interviewee. We're struggling to find really pointed dogman sightings. Well, maybe there's a reason for that.
Well, the caller presents the idea that people
Most
are
people
scared,
don't want to talk about Dogman because they're afraid to discuss it.
Yeah.
So then they talk about old stories and legends.
Yeah, which is okay.
We then cut to an old woman who used to run a metaphysical store. But I didn't believe in vampires or werewolves then, she says. She had a man come into her store claiming to be a werewolf. He was from a pack of werewolves from California, and he was on the run from the pack. Sounds like a movie plot, don't it?
And was she the one that was talking about them having a gathering and they had license plates and stickers on their black vehicles of werewolf symbols?
Yes.
Like, yeah, that's a way to have a secret society. Put a werewolf symbol on your bumper, on your rear bumper.
Wow. Why are you laughing?
Because I find that very amusing. It's a secret. We're absolutely hush-hush about it. So we'll have
Well, we then cut to the film guys exploring an old railroad tunnel that might have a dogman living inside, and they do see dog footprints. After another interview, the filmmakers hang out in a cemetery at night, and we get lots of shots of graves and night vision. Then they complain about being cold and go back to their campfire and pray.
Pretty much.
We never see a dogman.
We don't. Well,
We never really hear a howl.
Well, we don't see. That's the thing with all these. We don't actually see any of these creatures. There's stories and legends, and but you know,
At least they could find some better stories.
yeah. And for this one, it was a little thin.
Well, the first 20 minutes or so is almost exclusively a couple talking about mumbo jumbo and magic, barely touching on werewolves, and the same couple is revisited several times. There are two types of stories here. First, there's the Dogman, who is an animal who lives in the woods like Bigfoot. He's a wild thing out in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also talk about werewolves, which are humans who turn into wolves at the full moon. The stories are similar, and they kind of overlap here. But a werewolf would not be living in a train tunnel or building nests out in the woods.
Well, not during the day when he's a human. Probably not.
If you're a werewolf out, why are you going to have time to build a nest? What are you going to do out there when the sun comes up?
Well, there's only so much hunting you can do. You might want to just, hang out and take a little napsy before you turn back. You've fed
like a real dog. They sleep most of the time.
You've fed, your belly's full. You want a little napsy before dawn.
Well, the production values are good. The audio and video are really well done, as all the documentaries are from Small Town Monsters. But this one is really lacking in witnesses. Most of their recent releases have had reconstructions, animations, and other things that are interesting to watch as the stories unfold. This one has very little of that. None of the stories were particularly compelling or felt like anything more than tall tales.
Well, I thought that one guy was especially interesting, but
the guy were across the road, he sounded like he saw something for real, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, they feel like leftover unused footage from their other, better films pasted together to release something for Halloween quickly. And that's really what this feels like. They just stuck some things together.
A little bit.
We laughed out loud at some of the stories, not because they were meant to be funny either.
Well, we already touched on me laughing about that.
Yeah. We would both recommend watching one of their previous films, The Dogman Triangle, Werewolves in the Lone Star State, instead.
Uh-huh.
There's a link in the show notes to read our review of that one. Much better. All right, and that takes us to Antimatter from 2016. Written and directed by Keir Burrows, stars Yiza Figueroa, Philippa Carson, and Tom Barber Duffy, hour and 49 minutes. Spoiler-free.
Spoiler-free? Well, this had an interesting start and finish, with a stretch in the middle that was a little bit too stretched. And the acting is fine, the story is at least interesting, but it starts to crumble a bit when you think deeply about it. It was kind of hit and miss overall.
Yeah.
Parts of it I really, really liked, and parts of it were like, really?
Just don't. This is one of those sci-fi kind of things that it just does not pay to think about.
The science is pretty way out.
Watch it, have fun, and turn it off when you're done.
Yeah, there you go.
We begin in Oxford, England, where a woman listens to an audio tape of Anna and her mother. We flash back to Anna and her mother 22 years ago earlier in Florida. We see that someone is holding a gun to the woman's head. And credits roll. Anna is now grown up and a student at Oxford. She's working on electromagnetic pulse tests for her thesis. Most of her experiments don't do anything until one test. She makes an electron disappear. Success. Nate says she couldn't have made it disappear, so it must have been simply moved somewhere. She repeats the test for him, and he says, "We're going to need a bigger boat."
Because it really is gone, so that's
How do you make matter just disappear?
Well, we need to scale that up, eh?
Yeah.
So they do.
Well, Nate brings in Liv, a hacker type, who talks about distributed computing and computer worms that will get them all the computer power that they could need.
And that's kind of a real thing. I mean, they do, there's some, big shared projects that you can sign up for where you basically... you allow your computer to be used while you're not using it. It stays online, and in the background, it networks with a whole bunch of other computers, and together you've got a collective computing power.
Like 15 years ago, I was doing SETI at home.
Yeah,
remember that one?
Yeah, that was one of them.
I don't know. I guess they still do stuff like that.
Yeah,
I have not been involved in that
There was one for
ages.
Cancer research, analyzing cells. Same kind of thing, but she's going to do it behind the scenes. All these people that leave their computers on all the time, she's going to, use just a little bit of their computing power to make a massive computing system.
But it's a virus kind of thing, so she's doing this without consent or knowledge.
Right.
All right, well, with the added computer power, they can now make larger and larger items go somewhere. They use 3 axes in their machine, X, Y, and Z.
Axes.
But Liv suggests that they can use that to calibrate where the items will move to.
Mm-hmm.
They do some adjustment and boom, they teleport things. This could be the biggest discovery of all time. They build a bigger machine, and they try it on a caterpillar, and it transports just fine. Then they use Liv's grandmother's cat. As Anna finds a gun in Grandma's office, Nate asks her out. Liv reports that Microsoft has issued a patch to break her worm.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's always Microsoft that gets the worms.
Yeah, it is.
They only have time for one more big test. They draw straws, and Anna gets into the machine. Anna vanishes, and then the screaming starts.
And they don't show us exactly then what happened.
We don't see it. Anna then goes back to the lab and is stopped by the animal testing opponents outside. She says she feels fine. They've lost all their computer capacity, but they do have some computer models saved until they can get major funding for a supercomputer. Everything went okay, right? Well, Nate is evasive. Liv asks about the tests, and Anna doesn't seem to know what she's talking about. What tests?
Yeah, and Anna's memory of the test seems kind of hazy.
She doesn't remember what happened.
Yeah.
Anna calls her mother about packing up her stuff to send to her, and she goes back home to find her apartment is a mess. There's someone in her room wearing a monkey mask. She tackles him, and they both fall out the window. Anna chases the guy down the street, but she ends up falling down some stairs and getting knocked out. Her laptop, credit card, and passport were all stolen. Anna tells Nate that she doesn't remember anything after the experiment. What happened? Well, Nate tells her not to worry, and Liv backs him up. Liv says the Cyber Terrorism Agency has tracked down the source of her worm to the university and may start asking questions. This may not be as harmless as she thought.
Uh-huh.
Anna's not even sure how many days have passed since the experiment. She keeps forgetting things. And it's clear that Nate and Liv are hiding something.
And at this point, not long after, it feels like this goes on too long. There's this long period where
weird stuff is happening, and
she's
they're
living
hiding.
her life, and clearly she's not right, and they're being evasive and hiding something. It goes on too long.
Yes, there's like 6 hours of this at least.
I don't know about 6 hours, but yeah.
Well, when she leaves the building, she sees several of the animal rights activists wearing the monkey masks, just like she saw before. The leader of the group says Anna needs to do the right thing, and then walks off. These animal protesters seem to live outside.
Yeah, they're very vehement about it.
Later that night, Anna goes back to the lab and finds a cable leading to a strange device. Nate calls and wants to do dinner tomorrow night. He tells her to write it down so that she doesn't forget. She admits that there's something wrong with her memory, and he blames getting hit by the mugger. He says she has an MRI appointment in a couple of weeks, but she doesn't know anything about that. He says she's told him all of this before, and she needs to stop the investigation. Is that UK medicine for you? MRI in a couple of weeks?
Oh, I don't know. I think it was just kind
I'm
of...
having memory loss today, and I may not get in for a couple of weeks to the MRI.
I think not necessarily. I think it was just a vague thing that he was telling her to pacify her.
Well, the vice chancellor of the university gathers everyone together. The cyber cops have traced the worm to this very building. Mr. Stovington is from GCHCQ. Okay.
Sounds very official.
It does.
Yeah.
And he's running the investigation. Anna wonders if she went through the teleporter, but her soul may not have gone with her. Liv and Nate are evasive on that.
Continuing to be evasive.
She calls her mother, who asks her for the password. Is that really you? You said I shouldn't trust you without the password. Anna has no idea what password she's talking about, and we see that Anna's mother's house is completely empty. Anna starts doing library research about brain damage, memory, and the mind. She wonders if human memories have mass. Memory is electricity, and electricity is just electrons, and electrons have mass, so, yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Well, there's a break-in at the lab, and everyone thinks it was one of the protesters. Anna accuses Nate and Liv of doing something to her, and she thinks they're trying to steal her project. She wants a maintenance man to open that locked door to the storage room that she can never get open, and he says he already gave her the key, so he can't.
And she, of course, has no memory of having the key.
The police and Mr. Stovington follow her home for some questions. He knows she's behind the worm. She hallucinated him and the sergeant as Monkey Mask Man. She refuses to say anything, but tells him to question the others. The mob of animal protesters is getting larger and larger. They confront her about the mice and the cat. They all start chanting, "Shut her down! Shut her down!" I don't think animal protesters get too upset about mice. And the cat was her grandmother's.
Yeah.
It's not like a real animal testing animal.
And the cat was fine.
Yeah.
And how do they even know about the cat?
How do they know about animals? How do they even know what's going on in the lab? Nobody else seems to.
Yeah.
Anna goes back to Liv's grandma's house and steals the gun. She then goes to Nate's house, breaks in, and searches the place. She finds the camcorder from the original experiment and watches it. The teleport went off exactly as planned, but there was some kind of instability, and she watches again in slow motion, and she sees that for an instant, she was in two places at the same time.
Oh, that's creepy. And doesn't she also find some footage of Nate in bed with a woman?
Yes, and she doesn't remember that.
Yeah, she thinks he's having an affair with the other lab assistant.
Nate arrives, and she pulls out the gun. She shoots him in the neck and runs outside. She tells Stovington that she's lost her soul, but then Liv pulls her into the lab. Nate's at the lab as well. He's not dead, just wounded.
Just winged him, yeah.
Nate explains that the wormhole was open for too long. The gravity field distorted the readings. They had to figure out a way to shut it down faster, so she went through a second time. Nate shows her the rest of the tape. The second time through the wormhole, the machine cut out, and there were two of her. You're the light that got left behind. Turns out she's photonic, made of light. She's not real, which is why she's not been eating or drinking or making new memories. The storage room opens, and the real Anna walks out. Real Anna admits to being the person in the monkey mask.
So every time the fake Anna came to the lab, she would just lock herself in the storage room, so Anna couldn't. So light Anna couldn't find her. But
let's not go with the butts just yet.
There's some issues we're going to talk about here.
Light Anna's mother calls on the phone, and they talk about the things that she remembers.
And her mother doesn't know that this is going on, that there's two of them.
Her mother sent her an audio tape of them playing the piano when she was little, and she plays that. This was the opening scene of the film. The real Anna takes the gun. Nate tells her that they've explained all this to her several times in the past, and it never went well, so they just let her wander around in confusion. Light Anna gets back into the machine as the real one watches. They activate the machine, and Light Anna disappears completely.
Because she has no mass.
Nate, Anna, and Liv discuss whether or not to proceed with their experiments. Anna tells Liv to hack the system and place the blame for the worm on the animal rights people. The end.
And science will go on.
Well, okay then.
Yeah.
Well, the early part with the experiments is interesting, but after Anna goes through the experiment, we see that something is off, but it takes entirely too long to go anywhere with that, and the second half hour feels incredibly slow. The resolution at the end is interesting and unique, but don't think too hard about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's entirely possible to write notes with specific details that are more than single words.
Yeah, she wakes up in the morning and there's esoteric notes, and the people at the lab, they don't tell her anything, and just let her wander around in the world.
Yeah, she got these individual words on Post-it notes to remind her of things. I mean, you could write a little narrative story or a paragraph about what you've done today or something more than what she's been doing.
Yeah. Or, every day, when she wakes up, explain to her again, what happened. Tell her the full story of her. Supposedly they tried doing that and it didn't work. But I don't know why it wouldn't. Because Anna is intelligent and reasonable and knows what's going on with the experiment. And if they fully explained it to her, and the real Anna was there every day.
You could write down the explanation for the entire movie in a paragraph.
Yeah.
Instead of just letting her guess.
Look, you're not real. We're sorry, but you need to hang out here with us in the lab. You can't go wandering out in the world, and we're going to try to fix this. And instead, just let her wander around thinking she's Anna.
They could have cleared up. And how much damage did she do to the real Anna's reputation by wandering around being,
her stuff
weird.
and her mother's relationship, and yeah.
Well, a little explanation would have cleared up a lot of the confusion here. Also, have you ever seen a movie where the animal rights people aren't portrayed as lunatics and weirdos?
They sure are in this one.
Why did they hide the real Anna in the closet and let the light Anna wander around out in the real world?
Well,
It makes no sense.
They didn't hide her in the closet. Every time Light Anna came to the lab, she hid herself in there so they didn't encounter each other.
Why would you let the defective version of you run around and take over your life, though?
Yeah.
You're going. Yeah,
Why? It doesn't make
the damage
sense
that
to
could
me.
be caused to her reputation. I mean, she's wanted by the police now.
Yeah. Yeah. Just tell this Light. I mean, and it gets poignant and sad because this Light Anna, as far as she knows, she is the real person, and she's got all the memories and all the emotions and everything of the real Anna. And coming to terms with the fact she's not real, but she knows. I mean, they could explain this to her. They could have.
Well, we did like it overall, but it kind of drags in the middle, and you definitely don't want to think too hard about any of it.
It made for an entertaining movie for us,
Yeah.
but no, that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Some of it, yeah.
Short film time. We watched a short film this week.
Short film.
Well, we watch a short film every week.
Short film.
This is a short film.
It's a short film.
It's called Consurgo, I don't know, from 2018, directed by Luigi Commendatore, written by him and Xemi Parra, stars Nicola Acunzo, Dee Imbert, Emmett McCarthy, Liliana Molina, and Ricky Sayers. 13 minutes, and there's a link in the show notes to watch this thing on YouTube. What happens?
Well, a naked man stands on a stool to feed his fish as credits roll. And we are told that consurgo means to rise, to lift oneself. Well, the man gets dressed, he gets on a train, walks through a busy urban station. It all looks pretty normal. Stops to watch a man doing a puppet show. There's like street hucksters and, various people set up doing things on the street. And we see that our guy has a shoe shine business that he sets up. And surprisingly enough, that's the creepy part.
Who knew shoe shine could be so weird?
Yeah.
Yeah, service workers like the shoe shine guys are weird people, right?
No, some of them.
This one is.
Yeah.
Well, some people take their jobs way too seriously. Everyone knows that you shouldn't bring your work home with you.
And he has no dialogue. Do you think he's mute? Or is he just a quiet guy? I couldn't tell for sure. But anyway, he doesn't say anything.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah. Others with him do, and there's others around him speak, but he doesn't. He never says anything.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, the man did, in fact, lift himself up, as the name suggests.
He did.
The story really made no sense until the very final shot, and then it all comes together really nicely. We thought it was very well done.
Well, it made sense, but it was just like, why are we watching this guy just going about his normal day?
Because it's
And then we realized what his normal day consists of.
Okay, so we will get to the Holly review here in a second, but before that, we want to talk about our 2 bonus films that you can read about over at horrorbulletin.com. Hellraiser VI, Hellseeker from 2009. Mm-hmm. We did Hellraiser V, Inferno a week or 2 ago, and this is very similar to that one.
It is.
Like the previous sequel, this one doesn't have nearly enough Pinhead or Cenobite action. It's like they aren't the main focus, even though it's supposed to be a Hellraiser movie. On the bright side, it does have a little Pinhead. Kirsty from the first 2 films is back, which is cool. And the movie itself isn't too bad.
Well, I didn't think it was too bad. I enjoyed it more than you did, I think.
Yeah, I'm tired of these movies that aren't what they advertise. This was not really a Hellraiser movie.
It wasn't Hellraiser-y enough.
Yeah, so you can read the whole thing over on the newsletter site. Mm-hmm. We also looked at 1999's The Sixth Sense. M. Night Shyamalan wrote and directed it. This is one with Bruce Willis and Haley Joel Osment. And this was a second viewing for both of us. We'd both only seen it once. I'm sure we were both surprised by that ending.
Oh, I was, yeah.
Yeah,
I was lucky enough to see it blind going in.
Me too. But this time we both knew what we were getting into, and it was interesting catching things that we missed the first time around.
Yeah, very interesting.
It's very well made and cleverly done. If you haven't already seen it, don't listen to us. Just go see it and
don't get spoiled.
Be surprised.
Don't get spoiled first. You can't say that highly enough. See it blind if you can.
I generally do these reviews by watching a movie once. There's a lot of things out there people say, oh, you pick so much up on the second time around.
This one you really do.
A movie that you have to watch twice, in my opinion, is not usually very good.
Generally
This
not.
would be the exception.
I said that of Hereditary, where I enjoyed it so much more the second time, and you criticized that. It's like, no, you shouldn't have to. And you have a point there. Yeah. But this one is worth the second watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so now onto our book review for the year.
Holly.
We don't do enough books.
No, we don't. And full disclosure, they were nice enough to provide
Yes, this was a
promotional
review
copies to us for
yes.
review copies, but we still liked it.
Yeah,
That
it's
didn't
good.
stop us from liking it.
Written by Stephen King, and there is a book trailer out there. You can actually watch him read a chapter of it. Stephen King reads the story, and there's a link in the show notes if you want to pick up a copy over at Amazon. Well, okay, spoiler-free. Spoiler-free. What's it about?
Holly Gibney is a private investigator, and she was first introduced in 2014's Mr. Mercedes. There's been multiple
Several
books
stories
since then, which feature her as a character.
I don't think she's the main character in any of them until this one.
Here it's all about her, yeah. And in this book, she starts investigating a missing young woman who had no real reason to go missing, according to her mother. And as Holly digs into the case more deeply, which is complicated due to it being set in the worst part of the COVID pandemic, she learns that the recent missing person may only be the tip of the iceberg. Could there be an actual serial killer on the loose that the police didn't even notice? And could it actually be worse than that?
It could be.
It could be.
Well, okay, to be completely honest, I haven't read a Stephen King novel since Under the Dome. I liked Under the Dome, the book, except for the ending.
Uh-huh.
And then after the TV series came out, I'm like saying, oh, hell with this.
The TV series just went on and on and on.
I know you've read some. What do you think the most recent one you'd read was?
Probably Under the Dome. Yeah,
you read that? Okay.
Yeah, I did read that. Uh-huh.
Well, anyway, neither one of us were in any way familiar with Holly Gibney, Mr. Mercedes, or any of that. Even so, the book was easy to follow, and any references to past cases and activities were very clear, I thought. You don't need to read the previous books in the series to get everything you need from this.
And I think that says a lot about him as a storyteller, that he's able to do that.
Yeah, there are references to things, but they're all explained, and it's not repetitive or boring. You know what happened in the past.
You could
at least you need to know what you need to know.
You can just hop into this one. Yeah.
This is definitely more of a mystery novel than a horror story, with the mystery turned inside out. We know who did it early on, and gradually we learn why, but Holly doesn't know what we do, and we root for her as she pieces things together. The serial killer's actions and methods definitely lean more toward the horrific, so be warned. Yeah, it's not a horror story, but there's some horror things going on.
Oh, it's horrible, yes.
There have been some people who complain that the book is too political. It clearly doesn't shy away from bringing in COVID, Trump, and anti-vaxxers into the story, but all those things really did happen, and they are relevant to the plot, so I don't see a problem with it.
Well, and he works it in just so casually, and that's how really things were. There, at the time of peak masking, there were people who were saying, "Oh, it's just a hoax," and "Oh, take the mask off. You're just being silly."
Well, I think part of it
Holly,
is
going through the world, encounters some of these people who were really out there, and and the people who are concerned about, did you get your shots? There were. I think he works it in realistically.
Stephen King is very vocal on Twitter about all kinds of political things.
Yeah.
And I think since he writes this from that same point of view, a lot of people are thinking he's pushing his political agenda.
I don't think so. I think it was more
realistic. I think this is
realistic.
just the way it was.
Yeah, there were really people like that, and still are.
Yeah.
No.
I think setting the story in the middle of COVID was actually an interesting thing to do, and I think it added a lot to the book. Made things much more difficult than it would have been otherwise.
Yeah.
Absolutely enjoyed the novel and recommend it to mystery fans and fans of Stephen King as a storyteller. For horror fans, it may be a little bit light, but it is a very good book and worth reading.
Highly recommended.
Yeah, we both like that one.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it for this week. Let's tune in next week where we're going to have, believe it or not, 4 movies and a short for you.
I don't believe it.
It's going to happen.
Believe it or not,
it's going to happen.
Okay. All right.
Don't know what they're going to be yet. But we will have some good stuff for you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
We'll see you next week.
See ya.